Hey everyone, I'm Kendall.
And I'm Lex.
And this is All Your Heart, Soul, and Strength. Here at this YouTube channel, our main goal is to speak God's truth and show how it applies to every area of your life.
If you're new here, welcome, or if you're a returning watcher, thank you so much for your support. Please like and subscribe, and if you were moved by this message and you feel like it could benefit others, go ahead and share it.
We hope you enjoy today's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We are really excited for today's episode. We are going to be going over the topic of being on the same page as your spouse. We're going to cover, three smaller categories that we have always felt important to be on the same page about that has helped guide our marriage into what it is today.
Yeah, so in going off that, the biggest thing we want to do before we dive into what it is to be on the same page, we wanted to cover a couple things that are what it's not. Agreeing about everything.
Just because you agree about everything does not necessarily always mean that you're on the same page.
Correct.
Agreeing just to end an argument and just go through with it without talking about it,
Correct. And that's why I think the biggest thing with that is just realizing that everyone, and this is anything, anybody in life, and realizing that everyone has different perspectives.
Yeah.
So I know the biggest thing and the hardest thing for most people in any relationship you have, or just any talk you have with others, is just realizing that where the other person's coming from.
Yeah.
Especially in arguments,
especially in marriage,
or just conversations. Yeah, especially in marriage. It's always important, I feel like, to always pray to God to see what it is your spouse is trying to say.
Yeah, and just because you're disagreeing does not always make one person right and one person wrong. You, like Kendall said, you have different perspective on things, and that's why it's so important to actually listen to your spouse or to anyone that you're disagreeing with.
Because agreeing on everything it's just not realistic. So, right. Touching on the few things we're going to speak on here is it's better that you don't agree on everything too, because the biggest thing that makes a marriage what it is being able to have different views on things as far as how we're attacking. Because maybe sometimes your spouse has a better way of doing it, and you just need to see what they're saying on that.
Yeah.
So it makes each other stronger. And I know we've talked in previous episodes about how we're opposites in a lot of ways, in good ways, and that comes to. Sometimes those can clash in conversations. It's important to remember that it's actually to your benefit if you don't always agree on everything.
Right.
The second one was one person setting the direction you're going, and letting them take the lead, and that's it.
Yeah. And before we get too deep into it, if you're living out, your traditional biblical Christian marriage, the man being the head of the house, I feel like we have found that. That describes our relationship. Kendall leads our family, and I know our family is only us two, but he leads me, he guides me, but he doesn't rule over me. Kendall is not making all of the decisions in our household without consulting with me first. Even if, what he's wanting to do, even if he knows if he brings it up to me, I'm going to have a different view, he still does it anyway because he's very considerate of my thoughts.
Yeah, and that's the healthy way to do it. Yeah. A healthy marriage, both partners contribute equally to setting the direction. You may, like you said, yes, we believe that the man is obviously supposed to head that direction, but that direction isn't chosen just on a man's decision alone. It's right. Through prayer, first and foremost, to God on it, and then obviously coming to your spouse and seeking guidance on that. Yeah. So, it's just important that So, you understand what being on the same page is not. Yeah. Because I really think when you get out of the way of what being on the same page isn't, it helps you to see what being on the same page is.
Yeah. And before we get into our three subpoints, I want to go ahead and read a verse from Matthew. It's Matthew 19:4-6. Haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and will be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate.
And that's good reading that verse after what you just said about how, the man is the lead, the woman was made from from man's side. So you're meant to lead.
Yeah.
But do it together, because if not, that can lead to resentment further down the road. Is if your partner doesn't feel heard or considered, even though you may be making overall decision on direction you go, that can lead to a lot of long-term turmoil.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing, is you want to always be working on getting out of ways that can lead to long-term being not happy, and being just disappointed at long term.
Yeah. And going back to the first thing we said, agreeing just to agree to avoid argument. I mean, the more you suppress and you keep that compacted down inside, it's going to come to the surface sooner or later, and it's most likely not going to be as graceful or gracious or understanding as if you just would have heard each other out right there in that moment and then made a decision and go forward with it and it'd be over.
Transition from that, we have 3 things we want to touch on that we feel are important to be on the same page about.
Yeah. And whether you're married and you're having some trouble with this, we hope this helps you. But also if you're engaged or if you're single and you're wondering what to look for in a partner or whatever it may be, we hope that these 3 things can bring light, that before they become a problem, you talk about them so they don't become a problem in your marriage.
Yeah, if you can start praying for them now before you even have possibly met your future spouse, that's preparation is always the best way to go with that. So that's good. That's a good point. This can help anybody who's walking, with anything. Even just, there's a lot of things in it that can be good communication in general with people. So, but the first one we wanted to touch on is spirituality.
Yes.
That being equally yoked is obviously very important. So it's very heavily what we believe in from the word, saying how important it is to be on the same spiritual level. You may push each other in aspects to grow each other's relationship with the Lord, but you have to have that same foundation.
You have to, like you took the words out of my mouth. You've got to have the same foundation, the same principles, religion. You have to be able to come together and let that be your common ground.
Yeah, and then so there's a great verse that speaks to that. It's 2 Corinthians 6:14. It says, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness?" It brings me to a point of I remember hearing, girls would always say, I can change him, and I can, you shouldn't.
No, you can't.
You can't. God's the only one who can truly change someone, and it's important to not try to be someone's God in that way, because that's what it can be if you're, and that's a dangerous road where that person will associate happiness with the person and not God. So I want to say that, like, the biggest thing with that is realize that God's the only person who can truly change somebody, and you got to put God in the right spot and not put someone as, okay, my happiness is tied to that person. It's like, no, happiness is tied to God first, and then your spouse, your partner adds to that.
Yes.
And improves that as well, but it can't be your source, because if it is, it'll always fail. It won't be enough if you're basing your happiness on a person. Yeah. Because we all fail.
I remember your mom, just in several scenarios throughout my, 6-7 years of even just knowing her, one of the first things that she told me that kind of stopped me in my tracks one time, I don't remember what it was about. And she said, "Girl, you are not their Holy Spirit." And that just, I'm like, oh, that's good, Miss Terry. That's good.
That is good stuff. And that's the biggest thing too. Like, you just realizing that, you can't fully bring someone to that same level. So you really want to make sure the person you're spending time with, and it could be your future spouse, that they're sowing into you and you're on the same level and foundation understanding of, where does our true happiness come from, our true spiritual walk.
Yeah. Like Kendall said, you can always push each other to grow, but you've got to be equally yoked and have that same foundation.
Which brings me into a point where I read this and I thought this was really good, is marriage is an other-centered union in a me-centered world. Yeah. Which is so true. And it's the flesh so hard sometimes to accept that thinking, because it's always like a me-centered world. But marriage is all about the other person. Always putting the other person's your best interest in heart first. And so, being on the same page spiritually is one of the only ways to fully get out of yourself daily.
Yeah.
And honor your spouse on days you might not want to. Because it's not always easy to do that.
Yeah, it's not.
So, that's what, divorce rates are higher than ever. And it's because people are we're living in such a world these days where instant gratification of, okay, if this doesn't make me happy, something's wrong, got to move on. So,
yeah,
it's always important to remember that's not how it's always going to be. You have to put in the work there. And so that's another beautiful thing about his marriage mirrors God's covenant relationship with his people. We are his bride, he says. And so we have to mirror that, what Jesus is to us, we have to mirror that to our spouse.
That's good.
Yeah.
And a quote by Carol Heffernan of Focus on the Family says, God did not create marriage just to give us a pleasant means of repopulating the world and providing a steady societal institution to raise children. Further, he planted marriage among humans as yet another signpost pointing to his own eternal spiritual existence. I'm not going to go into the whole Psalms, and this is something that, I would encourage you to do. We could read through every single verse and elaborate on every single verse, but something that I would like this channel to become is, if we mention a chapter or a verse, we would really encourage you to do your own digging and read it and see what you get out of it. But this is going to relate a lot to Psalm 45. It's actually it's a wedding psalm, and it perfectly describes the king and his bride and relates it back to the Lord on how we are his bride and we await his return. Mm-hmm. Just like how maybe you might be awaiting your future spouse, or if you're about to get married, you're going to be anxiously anticipating, the doors to be opened for your groom to be revealed to you. So I encourage you to read through, and that's Psalm 45. It's a very short verse, and if you have a study Bible, it's amazing, and it goes into a lot of what we're talking about.
And so that leads into another point of, how do you portray what Jesus wants to portray through your marriage to others? How do you not even portray as in how do you mirror that to others? Yeah. How do you show it? Serving your spouse is one of the biggest ways, and I've touched on this before, that serving is the best way to get out of yourself.
Yeah.
For a lot of different ways, and then it's no different than in your marriage, because serving your spouse helps remind you that happiness is not the primary goal.
Yes. In
your marriage. If it is, then every marriage would fail, and people would ultimately not be happy.
Yeah, the minute you're not happy, it'd just be over.
Which is how a lot of people treat marriage these days, sadly. And so it's like different things of, from irritating habits to weighty issues that seem impossible to resolve. Loving one's spouse through the tough times isn't easy, but the same struggles that drive us apart also shed light on what values are in the marriage. If it was easy, it wouldn't grow you. It sheds light on something that needs to be addressed between each other. It's like, okay, this isn't something we need to just brush under the rug. We have to grow from it. How can we get on the same page with it and then move forward with it together in that same direction? I think is really important with it. When
Kendall and I first got married, I always say, we were kids, and it until you get to the back end of your 20s, you realize how much growing you do from 22 to 27, which is my gap. Well, almost 27 right now. When we got married and I was 22, I look back and I had so much growing to do, where most of the things that I would bicker about just came from immaturity in myself, immaturity in marriage. So it was really important, like Kendall said, the nitpicky things, it was things that we needed to talk about so they didn't continue to become a problem.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is it's important to get everything out, even because the little things can lead to bigger things. Yeah. And sometimes they've got an underlying issue. So, going off all that, the last point we really have on being the same page spiritually is marriage needs God's grace and mercy ultimately, because you can't do it without that. You will fail every time. So I thought it was important to touch on this is you go first to Jesus, which we've kind of talked on this, but just a reminder that you go first to Jesus to provide your joy and happiness. then this allows you to reflect this same happiness and love to your spouse through God's grace.
Yeah.
Because it like we've said, it's not always going to be it's more of a thing like how can you show love to your spouse through the hard times too, and through the not easy conversations. And so God's grace and mercy can get you back on track when you say simple prayers such as, help me to see how I can improve for my spouse, or Lord, how are we supposed to move forward? Those are two good little short just things to stop and consider. How can I see these things through the same way my spouse is? Do I need, if there's anything in me, change me.
Yeah.
And then your spouse should see the same.
And usually when you take that, is there anything to change in me? Stop making make them change their mind. That's when it all kind of starts to unfold. It works itself out.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so a good verse that goes with that is 2 Corinthians 12:9. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me.
Yeah.
It's just showing how, with our human nature, we can only be made strong by God's given power. It's when he can make your weaknesses his strength from through grace. It's when you realize, okay, God's grace is sufficient enough.
Yeah.
And he can use that weakness.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a powerful verse, just saying, I will boast in that. I will be like, I will realize I am weak in some areas. It's acknowledgement and saying, but God isn't, and he can make me strong in my weakness.
And it's kind of goes the same thing with mirroring marriage. There are plenty of areas that I'm weak in, but Kendall is strong in. But if we were both strong in those areas, we definitely butt heads on it. Yeah. So it just goes, you're good. The balance. We balance each other out.
So just to close on that, really just the biggest thing to take away from this is admitting your own flaws, and the strength to make an apology and have a willing heart to forgive only comes from God. So realize that we both have flaws. Where's there a way we can grow in that? And then how can we move forward on the same page from that point forward going forward?
Yeah. All right. Moving on into our second point of another huge topic that you should always be or try to be on the same page about is finances, your money.
Yeah, so to open this, I think it was important to read this statistic. So according to Jimini's law firm, money is widely known as one of the leading causes of divorce in America. It's estimated that financial problems contribute to 20 to 40% of all divorces. That means that every 10 marriages that end divorce, 4 of them are because of money. And so it's important going off that to realize that you can't work towards your financial goals if one person is on board and the other is not.
Being on the same page.
Being on the same page. Another statistic I wanted to mention was, according to SunTrust Bank's survey conducted online by Harris Poll, 35% of people blame finances for the stress they experience in their relationships. And often at the heart of many couples, financial strife is debt. So
yeah, if you didn't watch our last episode, we encourage you to. It was all about finances, 5 basic principles that you should know about managing your finances, some tips, that we put out. So without going too far into finances, I encourage you to watch that episode.
Yeah, because that episode is a lot of backbone from what we'll talk about today. So with this,
kind of the funny story, that I touched on in the last episode real quick. Before me and Kendall got married, we had just gotten engaged. Kendall sent me, just out of the blue, he emailed me a budget template. And he said, not sure what you make or how you're managing your finances, but in case if you don't, start practicing, basically.
I don't even remember that, which is crazy. But it's definitely something I did, I know for sure.
Yeah.
It sounds like me.
I knew Kendall was very smart with his finances, and I knew that I was a little bit more charismatic.
Oh yeah. Well, you were just young too. You hadn't even had the chance.
Baby.
You were a baby.
I couldn't even have a legal drink.
She didn't have 20. Credit yet.
I didn't have credit.
A budget. But so that was a lot. Like you'd mentioned earlier, it was a lot you had to grow in, and that that's just, I mean, you were 22, so
So getting on the same page as Kendall, and the thing is if you're kind of like us, where one is very heavy into it and knows a lot, and maybe you're at the beginning of your marriage or the beginning of your engagement, this is one of those things where it could be very easy for one person to rule and dominate over the other one. This is how we're going to spend, and if you don't like it, get out or oh well.
Yeah.
And this has been, an area where Kendall has educated me. First of all, he has shown me the options. Well, what do you think about this? Or, he'll bring me into his office and show me our budget spreadsheet. Do I know everything about it? I don't understand everything. But that's okay, because Kendall has a lot of grace with me in understanding that I'm not a numbers person. I'm visual. I like colors.
So I try to make it a little colorful.
Yeah, put in a little butterfly over here and
colorful pivot tables.
Pigeon tables.
But then that going off, I mean, that like you said, that's important, because just because one person is better with this and might take the lead on it doesn't mean, and sometimes it's even the female who's more into the financial side. That's great. There's always going to be someone who's more inclined and enjoys it more, or just wants to take the lead on that.
Yeah.
That's fine, and it's always how it's going to be. But you definitely need to be on the same page as far as not like, you need to
your
include
goals.
the other person.
Yeah.
They need to be included, and it's so important that even though I may ultimately make the monthly budget sheet, I want her to feel included. Lex doesn't really look at the stuff as much as I do, and that's fine. I just want at the beginning of the month say, like, this is where we're at. What are our goals for this month, and then even longer term? And here's where everything's kind of going.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like, okay, well, maybe we could do this, blah, blah, blah. You can point things out, but you want to present it to the other. You don't want them to just be in the dark. And going off, because I heard stories of where people, they have everything separated. And it's like, don't worry, like, I got this covered. You worry about your own money. And it's like, that's just not unity.
Yeah.
It's not.
We always want to be careful with our words on this is the way you should be doing it. But just going, again, back to the very first verse that we read, one flesh, we are united.
Yes.
And we believe, and we hope to encourage you to also open your eyes, if you do not think this way, that you really are one. And money can ruin your marriage in the blink of an eye. So, back to what Kendall was saying, we do have joint bank accounts.
Yeah. So, we have, we know where everything, the biggest thing too is, even though I may leave everything, I want her to know where everything's at too. Say I pass away. I mean, it's important to have that somewhere, and to have the spouse have a general knowledge of that, because you need them to know, okay, where is everything at? Like, and so, it's just important, like we said, being on the same page. You need to, don't try to hide that. When you're trying to keep that in the darkness, it's always going to come to light, and it's either going to be in a good way or a bad way. Like, it's either going to be you brought it there yourself, or it's going to come up in a bad way. And so that goes into a verse of Luke 16:11 that I think speaks on this very well, is, if then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you with true riches?
Yeah.
If God can't trust you to be an open book with your spouse, and to know that you're sowing your riches together, your wealth and everything that's your income, how can he entrust you with more if he knows you can't even trust your spouse with that?
Yeah.
And to, hiding that from them, it's which is a topic we're going to touch on next, which in financial infidelity, it shows like, okay, how can God truly bless that if he can't give you more if he can't trust you with a little? So the biggest thing is, along with prayer and seeking God on financial decisions, it is also a good practice as a couple to revisit your budget sheet with your goals, grow through your financial goals as a couple, and start to seek in certain ways in spending your money. Start to see, is there a way that's something that's hindering us from our goals? Whether it be me, you, as a guy, am I spending too much on, going like hunting, golfing, something like that? I mean, I know it's touchy subject with guys, but sometimes it's like, where are there certain areas? And there's also, you want to have that room for enjoyment. Don't get us wrong.
Balance.
It's balanced, but it's like, where are these little things that maybe I can improve that, and also my spouse can prove that, are not helping us reach our financial goal together that we have. You're strong. I mean, you're stronger together.
Yeah.
With that.
And you never want to lie about having money, and you never want to lie about your spending habits and or your debt. There's a stat, and it says that 28% of marriages, one spouse is hiding debt somewhere. If you listen to Dave Ramsey or something, there was one lady whose, what was it? Her husband passed away, and he was in like
hundreds of thousands of credit card gambling debt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You never know what's going to happen, and you never want to leave your spouse with that burden.
Yeah. Yeah. When I heard that, it's just, there's so many levels to it that are very just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You know, it's the first off, the lie.
Yeah.
Second off, the hole you've been dug in from that lie. $100,000 in credit card debt that compounds so quickly that where you feel like you don't have a big enough shovel ever. It's crazy because I remember them touching on it. It was like $5,000 a month just to hit the amount of interest, and it's like that's suffocating. So you know, that's a dangerous road to go down, and obviously gambling, that's a whole nother side of it that can lead to bigger issues. And so, you know, both of those things going and, you know, hitting together, the biggest thing is be upfront with your spouse about your debts before you get married. Your student loans, your you know, anything, your car debts, just whatever it is, you just get it all on the table, because the sooner you do, once you're married, it's gonna come out later. Financial infidelity is one of the biggest things that can just break a marriage.
With being upfront and being honest, once you know you get it all out in the open, don't micromanage your partner with spending. I mean, if your goals are out in the open, you have your plan written down, y'all are both very aware of where your finances are. I mean, if someone goes to Target and buys a swimsuit, if it's a problem and you didn't have the money, bring it up in a graceful way. In that moment, it might not be the best time to bring it up, but you know, once you do your review of the budget, you know, hey, we can't do this right now.
What we do is we kind of set our own little personal amounts that we can spend on whatever, me and Lex, and so Lex has her amount, like this is what I'm gonna spend on anything I want. I just always harp on just at least, you know, log it for me. Yeah, I don't care if you spend on whatever. I just want us to be able to keep track of this is where we're at. That's it. You know, I want us to know where our number is, and that we're just in range of that. But you know, it's important to have that amount where, and that freedom where your spouse feels like, okay, I can spend on the things I want.
Yeah.
If we've hit our goals first, if we're hitting all those things, then, you know, obviously the last thing with that is you enjoy your money with your spouse. Yeah, you enjoy those trips. If you got to a point where you're financially free and you feel like, okay, now we truly enjoy.
Yeah.
Because you want to live, like Dave Ramsey said, he'll say this a lot, which I really do like it. It's you live like no one else, so later you can live like no one else. Live and give like no one else is what he says. And so it's when you make those sacrifices early on, you know, you can live like no one else. Everything out in the open. That's the best.
Honesty is the best policy.
Once you hit your goals and you know what your goals are, balance it. So real quick, once you identify the financial problems in your marriage, it's time to start making changes. And this may involve creating a budget, getting rid of debt, or increasing your income. If one spouse is struggling with a spending problem, they may need to change their spending habits or get help from a financial counselor. Like Lex said, don't micromanage, but just be like, you know, how can I bring this up if I feel like my spouse is stumbling in this area and it's making us both stumble on where we're trying to head to? How can I bring this up to them in a good way, loving way that's not going to be like hounding them on it? And a big reminder with all this we always want to bring up is your financial goals are always changing. They're always changing more you're going through life. So always be upfront with your spouse about that. Like, okay, now we're at this season of our life. What's changing? Where are we putting it? There's different seasons of life, and you're going to change some things, and that's okay.
And our third point for this episode is being on the same page about your health and your fitness goals. And as silly as
man of God, God's tower of power, still gets her. Yeah.
Anyway, back to our regular scheduled programming. We are two people who have been on two sides of the extreme. And for several reasons, we think it's, for one, not even just for your marriage. It's just so important to live a healthy lifestyle and for your marriage so you can have a long, healthy, fulfilling, exciting, adventurous life together. I mean, you don't want to be, 60 and ran down and can't move and can't walk. Do whatever makes you happy. And if that is sitting on the couch watching TV 24/7 and, living an unhealthy lifestyle, then so be it.
But we're going to call you to more than that.
Yes.
Just to go off that. We feel like, God's got more for you out there than that,
Yeah.
Enjoyment and entertainment and things, but with an able body, calls us to an able body so we can fulfill things He's called us to serve others, to be, to fully live out the life that God even has for us.
Yeah, come on.
As well as our relationship together. I wasn't trying to talk over you there right there, just chiming in and saying like, God's got plans for you and what you do with your discipline as far as your body really it reaches other areas of life.
It does.
It reaches your disciplines in your job and your relationship with one another.
Yeah.
It's so important to see it, not just for the physical of how you look, but the heavenly temple God gave you.
Yeah.
You want to take care of that for spiritual reasons. If God calls us to, you only get one body.
Yeah.
And
one.
It's important to remember every day, every little things stack on each other. And so God's gifted you this body. How can you, return the favor to God and saying that, I honor this body. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to enjoy my cheat meals here and there, but what am I fully doing for the long term to fully step into what God's called me to do in that area of life and be disciplined in those things? Kendall
and I have been on two sides of the extremes with our health. During COVID, as most people, we gained a lot of weight for one, lack of resources, to get to a gym. And that's an excuse. We could have ran our tails off, and been in the sun and, outside.
And we did a little bit, but you can't outwork out a bad eating habit.
That is we love to say that you cannot outwork a bad diet. Mm-hmm. So, just taking care of yourself. And then, we went through the whole trying to lose the weight that we gained, during COVID. And then I jumped right into bodybuilding shows, with competing. And I was still not happy. I was unhappy, overweight, and I was unhappy at some, like the best shape, the best shape I've ever been in my entire life. Then we both went into competition season together and we competed together, and that was fun. But let me tell you why. It's because we were on the same page.
Yeah.
When I was competing and Kendall was not, I had fun. I will say, I will not say it was a miserable time. Yeah. But mentally, physically, just the fact, that Kendall needs a little extra food, and, he got a burger for dinner. I was angry. I'm like, why can't I have that? What? This is stupid. Why am I doing this?
The age-old females being like, man, guy can eat it whatever he wants.
Whatever he wants. And I'm over here on chicken and rice. Thank you, Chris Malonsaw. But when I was on one extreme and he was in the other, it created friction. We couldn't find common ground. He wanted to go, not out, but he wanted to go out and do things with friends. Like, let's go to dinner with friends at someone's birthday. And I'm just sitting here like, I can't. Like, I don't want to do that.
It can be not as fun in a lot of ways when you're doing that. So it's all about balance. Like we talked about with balancing financials. How do you balance your health? Yeah. Nothing about saying wrong if you really love competing. Great. It's not like that, because we love the aspect of putting our best foot forward in that aspect of and competing against others. It's always fun to have a goal like that.
Yeah.
But
then again, that second round of competition, we were doing it together, and it was much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because we were on the same page with our health and our fitness goals.
So then it's like now we found a good middle ground where we eat more and we are a little more laxed and doing other things, but we also still love our fitness. And the biggest thing, you don't get as burnt out on it when it's not as much as a job almost. It's like you enjoy working out again because it's more for you and for your health. That's the biggest thing comes out to, what are you doing it for ultimately? Yes, you want to look good, but it's all about your health at the end of the day. It really is. That's the bigger thing. And
with doing it, and I'm not even going to say the right reasons because there's really no right or wrong reason, but doing it for yourself and not others or for your spouse, it's just enjoyable. You know, if your spouse is really into fitness and you're not, or you take a boyfriend, girlfriend, you don't even have to go, you don't even have to take it to marriage. You know, if you're dating someone, whichever partner it might be, that's really into the gym and you're not, and you're just continuing to live an unhealthy lifestyle, gain weight, become unmotivated, it goes and pours into all the other areas of your life. And then, you know, if that partner is trying to drag you to the gym, you are going to hate it. Yeah. You're going to hate it.
Yeah. That's something you definitely, you'll clash if you don't have the same values in the health aspect. And it's important to call your spouse out to a higher standard. Like
not call them out that they're gaining weight.
You know, don't do like, men.
No.
But to be like, you know, hey, what life are we building for each other? We've talked about our finances. What are we building? What's our goals? What's our physical goals that we want to be able to accomplish later in life?
Yeah.
What
run a marathon? Like, do you want to hike all of the national parks?
Yeah.
You know, what's our...
Like when me and Lex worked toward a goal last year of doing a 5K for the Saints 5K before the season kicked off. And Lex was enjoying running at that period of time. And so it's something we worked to, and it's something that we could enjoy doing together. I mean, it's something like, okay, we did it. And so,
I'll do it again.
Yeah. No,
but I won't make Kendall stay back. Okay, my legs are this big, Kendall's legs are this long, and I was running like this.
No, I mean, I'd rather stay with you because I already did one by myself, and so I liked to do that with you. It was fun. And so going off that, which we touched on a little bit earlier, I thought it was important to tie this in, is we had mentioned that you can't outwork a bad diet.
Yeah.
In the finance world, there's important saying where it's you can't out-earn bad spending habits. It's the same correlation there. And so it's important to know you may spin your wheel so long on working out, but what's the root that's holding you back there? It's your eating habit. Same thing in finance, spinning your wheel. I'm earning all this money. Yeah, but where's your spending at? Are you outspending what you're earning at the end of the day? If you are, it's the same thing. If you're not expending the same, like more calories than you're putting in, you won't.
That's good.
You're not going to get your goals. So that's just a side note to tie in, health with your finance as well. Things that you got to have the right order with things. And so it's important to, like we said, to push your spouse in these areas with your health without calling them out or saying, anything about the weight, but being like,
if she says, does this make my butt look big? Answer's no.
It's a trap.
And with finding, balance in your health, we want to do a lot of episodes on health, just with what we've learned and tips and nutrition. But we really want to hit on why, you should live a healthy lifestyle. And sometimes obsessing over the way that you look or obsessing over the scale or numbers or weighing out your food, it can lead to just a very miserable life, and it leads to you idolizing your body.
And that ties into that episode where we talked about what you think going into the physical and making that bad circle of viewing yourself in a negative way and manifesting in the physical.
I want to read a verse out of 1 Timothy. It's 1 Timothy 4:8. It says, "For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come." We want to talk a lot on spiritual discipline, just discipline in general, like Kendall said, being disciplined here is going to flow over into being disciplined over here, finding rest, finding that way to not obsess over one way or the other. Which
opens up, God's able to open up so many doors when he sees you're disciplined in certain areas.
Yeah.
He knows he can trust you with more, like we've said, in many different aspects, finances being one of them.
Yeah.
So it's really important to be like, okay, God, how can I best steward what you've given me?
Yeah.
How can I best use my body in the way that's glorifying to you? What can I do to best use this one body I've been gifted?
Well, this wraps up episode 4 with being on the same page with your spouse financially, spiritually, your health goals. And, we're not going to solve your problems by doing this podcast, but we do hope to shine light.
Shine light on the guy who can fix, the one who can fix the issues.
If you have issues in any area, go to God first. Pray together for each other, over each other, separately. Pray for yourself, pray for your spouse.
Yeah.
And that's with everything that you do in a marriage.
Yeah, just like you said, I think you said it best, it's all about going to God with these things and growing together from it, getting on the same page so you can not harbor that resentment long term going forward with God's plan for you and your marriages.
Yeah. I mean, your marriage could be a powerhouse if you just get on the same page. It's all about understanding and knowing and listening and dying to yourself and flourishing in your marriage as one.
All right, guys. Well, thank y'all for joining for our 4th episode, and we look forward to seeing you for the next one. Every time.